Gray Mills is an attorney and a current state representative, but he wants to be your next lieutenant governor here at North Carolina. We meet him next on North Carolina Now.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Good evening, I'm Kelly McCullen here for a very special edition of North Carolina Now. We are talking with Lieutenant Gubernatorial candidate and Republican State Representative Gray Mills. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I was looking on social media, Twitter and Facebook. People said Gray Mills jumps in last minute. Is that true? Was this a late decision for you?
Well, it was something that I was taking a hard look at for a long time. And when Lieutenant Governor Walter Dalton decided to run for governor, of course we have a vacant governor's spot, a vacant lieutenant governor spot. When I saw there was going to be a new leadership team, I wanted to be a part of that team. So that's when I made the decision to run.
And you were looking at, there was a three-person race for all intents and purposes. You had Dale Folwell out there early, Gurley out there early. Dan Forrest been running for 2 years. You must see some opportunity there. What are you bringing that's different from those gentlemen?
Well, each one of us have our own agenda, our own experience, and our own things that we want to do. And I look forward to this race and running, and I think I can bring a lot of new things to the table.
Yeah, the polls that I saw, public policy polling, had everyone under 10% support.
I saw that.
Not that folks are against you, they don't know the candidate, so you're in there about 4 or 5%, you're in the hunt. What do those undecided voters need to know about Gray Mills?
Well, first of all, I'm a husband, I'm a father of 3, and I'm a conservative lawmaker, and I've been serving in the State House since 2009.
Now, conservatives have different flavors, or social conservatives, physical conservatives. So far, all the Republicans have said they're both. Which way do you lean? Are you a fiscal guy, or does social issues push you to run for public service?
It's both.
Is it?
Yes.
50-50?
It's both.
But in this climate, what's going to push you if you're made a lieutenant governor? What problems are out there you see that need fixing?
The biggest problem we have is, of course, jobs and the economy. That's one things I want to do and concentrate on as the next lieutenant governor.
Let's look at the job issue. Right now, unemployment around 10%, fluctuates up or down. What do you do about jobs? Lieutenant governor's limited anyway, but you do have a bully pulpit. What's your plan?
Well, it's to play a role with the next governor of the state. Of course, his big challenge is going to be correcting our economy, and that's also going to be the big challenge for the next lieutenant governor. Now, we can start with energy. I think the next governor is going to be Pat McCrory. He is on record stating that he's for gas exploration. Of course, our present Governor Perdue, has apparently had some change of heart in that regard. I supported the gas exploration bill in the State House, and I plan to do so as the next Lieutenant Governor. That is about jobs. It's about a new revenue stream for our state. It's our energy source here from North Carolina, and it's something that can help not only North Carolina but America. So we need to pass a bill that will allow us to test drill for gas here in North Carolina.
When you drill for gas, you talking going offshore and finding things away from people's homes in the water? Do you want to go onshore and frack, as they call it?
I think fracking is what we really need to take a serious look at.
You think it's a safe technology? Is it ready for prime time? Because you read one article that praises it, the next article says you better be scared of this fracking.
I think it's safe. I think that the data is there to show us that it's safe, and I think it's something that we need to take a serious look at. And we need to pass a bill that will allow for this test drilling here in North Carolina.
Other forms of energy have been pushed in legislative sessions past. We've had wind energy, ethanol plants have been built in North Carolina. What do you feel about the alternatives to drilling and fracking?
I'm all for exploring those alternative energy sources as well, but we have to be realistic. We have to look at what is going to meet our future needs and meet our needs of today, and I think fracking is the way to go.
Fracking above anything else, even oil drilling?
Well, I think that's one thing that we need to do here in North Carolina.
So you're seeing jobs, you're seeing revenue from petroleum, from drilling and fracking exploration. What else do you see this economy needs in North Carolina to get back on track if you perceive that it's off track?
Kelly, I think that we need an advocate for the small businesses and the small business owners, and that's what I plan to do as next Lieutenant Governor.
there's differing definitions of what a small business is to North Carolina candidates. What's a small business to you?
I think it's definitely under 50 employees and probably a whole lot smaller than that. Now, I'm a small businessman myself. I grew up in a family of small business people. I'm a product of a family small business. My first job, Kelly, was working in a small retail shop, Main Street, small town, North Carolina. And I watched my parents struggle and succeed. My goal was always to open up my own small business, and in 1998, I had that opportunity. I pulled together my savings, started my own law firm. Since that time, for the last 14 years, I've met a bi-weekly payroll every 14 years. And so I think I understand a lot of the struggles and a lot of the problems that small business people are having today. You know, Kelly, a lot of the small business people that I speak to, they just feel left out of the legislative process here in Raleigh. And as a member of the House, I can see why. There's a lot of lobbyists up here. And I have had lobbyists visit my office from all kind of industries, be it banking or finance or utilities. But Kelly, I have yet have a lobbyist come in my office and say, hey, I represent the mom and pop store down the street. Or hey, I represent the family company or the family manufacturing plant from such and such a county. We don't have that here. And as the next Lieutenant Governor, I intend to be advocate for the small business owners in North Carolina.
I've heard Democrats, when they were in power in legislature, and now Republicans, say they're representing the small man. You say there's not a lobbyist that ever represents the true small business, but if everyone recognizes that fact, why not just make time for the mom and pop? Why are they shut out, and why do lobbyists have so much power? They shut out the guy who owns the dime store on Main Street.
Well, the guy who owns a dime store on Main Street doesn't have the resources or the time to go find a lobbyist. And what we should be about as public servants is remembering that we represent everyone, regardless if they can hire a lobbyist or not, and that's what I'll be about as the next Lieutenant Governor.
What would be different in Raleigh if the small businessman under 50 employees got that voice down here, if you could be that liaison that they could count upon?
Well, I think it was going to improve North Carolina dramatically if we concentrate on small businesses. That's where the growth and the jobs comes from. That's what drives our economy here in North Carolina. That's what the majority of businesses are small businesses.
But we see only these big bills for big corporations. Deals come, deals go. Most of them are in secret. Most involve millions of dollars in incentives. When we read about them in the newspaper or see them on TV, can you mimic that at a small scale? Does the small man need incentives to keep his business going into higher? Do you give it to him?
No, I think what small business people want is fairness. And one thing we can do is eliminate the corporate tax here in North Carolina. We can start by lowering it. Matter of fact, I proposed a bill last session to do just that, reduce the corporate tax. But Kelly, there's a lot of good people here in Raleigh who serve in both the House and the Senate on both sides of the aisle. And I think that the majority of legislators do want to help out the small business people, but we just need to do some of the things that would. We just need to make sure that they come to the forefront.
What do you do about those small businesses where the proprietor does not file at the corporate income tax rate? Because lowering that rate at the state level won't do them any good.
Well, we need to take a look at all our taxes and restructure all of our taxes. North Carolina is not competitive with our surrounding southern states. We need to look at our income tax. We need to just look at all of our tax structures that will help all of our North Carolina businesses.
All right, let's go back to incentives. I do want to talk about tax reform. It's on everybody's mind. It seems to be running for Lieutenant Governor and to a large degree Governor. But on incentives, you hear people down here say, Democrats and Republicans, they're necessary. You hear another group says they're evil. You hear a group in the middle says they're necessary but evil. Which is it?
Kelly, I think that the next Lieutenant Governor, a big part of that job is going to be helping the next governor, who I said I think is going to be Pat McCrory, institute a long-term economic plan. And he is on record as saying, listen, we need to get away from this reactionary incentives that we do. If you look at my House record, you'll see that I haven't been a big fan of incentives. I don't think it's the answer. We just need to take a more long-term approach and get away from the incentives games way we're presently playing it.
Okay, long-term plan, you would say ease out of the incentives, I guess as people see it as
a
giveaway.
Correct, and have a more competitive tax structure when you look at North Carolina compared to the other states.
Well, we can get in the weeds on taxes now. What do you see about North Carolina's present tax structure?
Well, I would like to see us lower the taxes as far as the income tax and the corporate tax rate. That's the start. We just need to eventually look at how we're going to overhaul the tax. You know, you hear a lot about lower the rate, broaden the base, things of that nature. That's the direction we need to go in. It's not going to be easy. None of this is going to be done immediately. It's going to take a long time and a lot of planning.
What do you think of rates right now? You're saying they're too high on the corporate side. Do you think personal income tax rates are too high?
I do. When you compare North Carolina to other states, we need to be more competitive.
Have you given any thought as Lieutenant Governor a rate at which you would advocate budget writers place income tax rates?
The exact rate?
Yeah.
Well, lower than what we have to make it competitive with other states. We need to study that. We need to look at what the other state's rate is and come in at an amount slightly lower than that or at least equal to it.
The broadening of the tax base, everything I've heard is you lower rates across the board, you broaden so more people pay. Critics of that are going to say you're making the poor pay more taxes, so you really increase taxes on the poor. Is that how you see the broadening of the tax base, that everybody should pay something even if they don't have a lot of money?
I think that everybody should pay something. Everybody should have skin in the game, so to speak.
So you don't think this is something, a wholesale change is not something you would see being done in 4 years, for instance, if you had a Republican
I would
counterpart
think
as
it's going to take
governor?
longer than that.
What if Pat McCrory is not the governor, because you've got some well-known Democrats running in this race too? Once again, not the unfavorables, but the undecideds, off the charts. Voters don't know. You've got Dalton Etheridge. Could you work with either of those?
Sure, absolutely.
What would change? What would change for you, having to work with them, but with a possible Republican Senate?
Obviously you're going to be a member of the Council of State, and you're going to be there at the table as Lieutenant Governor, and you want to work with not only the governor but the other members of the Council of State. Sure, I mean, that can be done.
Well, and this campaign also at the state level will be defined by a sales tax. There's some candidates on the Democratic side say it's time to give at least part of a penny back. Let's reinstate it. Let's fund education, some other state issues. What do you feel about sales taxes and their roles, temporary or permanent?
Kelly, that was a big discussion, as you know, this past session. A lot of folks were pushing to increase the temporary sales tax. I was one of the ones who said, no, we don't need to do that. A lot of us campaigned back in 2010 on that sales tax issue. And we thought it was wrong when the Democrats instituted the session before. So I'm glad that we didn't go that route. I don't think it was necessary, and I don't think that that's the answer.
Is there ever a time when a sales tax would be appropriate to help the state get out of a bind?
If you want to adjust the sales tax, you need to keep it revenue neutral and take away a tax somewhere else. I don't think that we have a tax problem here in North Carolina. I think we have a spending problem, and I think that's the way that we have to address it.
In the House, you were part of the budget that has reduced spending in North Carolina by constitutional mandate. Where should state spending be right now?
Well, I think that we did a good job passing that budget.
You like that budget?
I do. I was glad that we were able to balance the budget and reduce those taxes. And so I think that was the right direction to take.
Is it a direction that we're still working towards, or you are as legislators, or have you reached the equilibrium you want? This is a nice state.
No, we always need to look at that budget, and we always need to examine it each and every session and make sure that tax dollars are being spent correctly and efficiently, and being spent on constitutional things, and there's always room for improvement in the state budget. The budget's huge, and we need to look at it. So are we there? No. Are we in the right? If we're going in the right direction, I think so.
What are those constitutional things you mentioned that need to be well supported in the state budget at the expense of other items you find in that budget?
Well, we just want to make sure that all our tax dollars are going to appropriate expenditures. Obviously, education's one of those, and we just want to make sure that what we are spending money on is a core function of government and that it is constitutional.
Public schools will be a core function.
Sure.
What about roads?
Sure, absolutely.
And because you hear about roads and schools and jobs and a lot of these boilerplate speeches out there about public education. What's your view of the traditional system as we know it in North Carolina?
Kelly, I think that the goals of the State Board of Education, of course, if you're a lieutenant governor, you get to serve as a member on that board, and I think that the goals are the right goals. That is to have every high school student graduate, prepare them for the future, and prepare them for a 21st century. I think you can boil that down into one sentence, and that is we need to educate our kids for the future and not the past. And as a member of the State Board of Education, I agree with those goals, and I would do my part to fulfill those.
Would you feel the need, if you were elected, that you would have a mandate on that board to be forceful right out of the gate, to say this is the direction we need to go in public education, or do you meld in with the group, a group that you have instituted reforms or voted to reform?
I'm an education major from Appalachian State. I'm a former teacher. Education is very important to me, and I think I could work with that board and work well in that board in meeting those goals.
That sales tax we talked about was to help the teachers. We've heard about helping fund school teachers, but what do school teachers, in your opinion, need in North Carolina right now?
I think that we need to improve education by utilizing technology. You can have a classroom full of students, but with the right technology, they can all learn at their pace. And I think that is the pathway to success, when you have students learning at their own pace.
Do you buy into public school funding, buying iPads and laptops and those sorts of things on behalf of students, or are you more hands-off and say technology is new books more often?
I would like to see more of the technology, more of the iPads, more of the computers. I think that that's been proven that it can work. Obviously, we're not going to get there overnight, but I think that's the way to go, and I think it's training our students for the 21st century, training them for the future to compete.
How would that mesh with the groups that you no doubt meet with that have a libertarian bent, where they would disagree with state resources funding the purchase of those types of computers because they're seen as part entertainment, part educational device?
I think that you've got to do it with a public-private partnership. I don't think that the state can bear all the costs and all the burdens, and I think that in North Carolina we're fortunate enough that we have a lot of private partners that I think would invest in such a program to improve education.
Teachers need the technology in the classroom. You think that'll help students, but what should teachers be willing to give up? What advantages they might have possessed in the past should they be flexible on to go forward in the 21st century?
We don't know if they have to give up anything. We just need to do a better job allowing the students to learn at their own pace. And I think that you'll see graduation rates go up. I think that you'll see students achieve more and become better productive citizens because of it.
How do you hold teachers accountable when it comes to high school graduation rates? Because a lot of getting over the hump and getting that diploma falls on the families and the students themselves in terms of personal accountability.
Well, you know, it falls on the students. I think it also falls a lot on the families, and we need to expect more from our parents as well.
Do you not blame the teachers if the rate stays 70, 80% graduation rate, four-year graduation rate?
Well, it depends. I mean, there's going to be a lot of factors and a lot of variables in on that. But we do know that parents who are engaged with their children are going to have more successful children in school.
Well, the legislature passed, and it was placed into law, this charter school cap lift.
I supported that.
And there are, the applications are rolling in across the street at DPI. What do you think of the charter schools, and what role will they play in the next 5-10 years?
Charter schools have proven to be an effective form of education. I supported lifting the cap. I think it was a right decision. I believe in school choice. I believe that parents ought to be able to choose what type of education venue that they want for their child. They know a lot of times what's best for their child and what's needed, and we ought to do more of that.
Very few candidates that I've met so far in these interviews have opposed the charter schools. Maybe they disagree on the number of having no cap versus some form of cap, but one issue that has been raised is the idea you can open a charter school, but there's no requirement that the kid down the road who needs a lift, who can't get to school because his parents just aren't able or won't, he can't access that charter school. How do you balance the mandates on these free operating campuses versus making sure the kid who's disadvantaged gets a shot at it, and that can make all the difference?
Well, we need to look at that. If a child's having a difficult time getting to the school of their choice, then we need to make accommodations for that. We ought to allow parents to send their children to any school that they want to send them to.
The general climate in the North Carolina General Assembly, how do you interpret that as you make a shift from representing a small area versus becoming a statewide official representing all North Carolina?
Kelly, I think that the majority of representatives down here want to do the right thing. We've got a lot of good ideas floating around this place and a lot of good bills that we can enact that will help all North Carolinians. And so I think, go back to your question, I believe you asked about the atmosphere of the place. I think that, you know, we're headed in the right direction. As the next Lieutenant Governor, I think that I would work well with the General Assembly. I've been here, this is my second session in the House, my second term, and it's a good position to be in. You know, the Lieutenant Governor has one foot in the legislative branch and one foot in the executive branch, and I've learned the legislative branch, and I look forward to to working with both sides, the House and the Senate, as a lieutenant governor.
Do you feel it's as partisan as the critics want to make it out to be?
Depends. Some bills can be very partisan. Majority of them are not. That's been my experience.
What bills out there? You said you've seen so many bills that could help all North Carolinians. Of course, not all of them passed. Which issues have you not seen movement on that you could get behind and use your influence as lieutenant governor to push across?
What I'd like to see is, of course, what we've mentioned, and that is more movement on the economy. And I think that we need to start with jobs, with energy there, and of course the small businesses that we mentioned as well.
How has the small business feedback been to you when you go out there and say, I want to represent you, the smallest of the small businesses? Is it cynical or is it supportive?
No, it's very supportive. And I think that they understand that I'm in small business, my family was in small business, and I think that they understand that I truly mean that, and I'm getting a good reception with that.
Gray Mills is an attorney and a current state representative who will be retiring after this term, but he wants to be your next lieutenant governor. Representative Mills, thank you so much for being on the show.